Mark Rogers TV knocking out the top five at every position in the SEC, and we go to the big boys up front on the offensive side of the football. Yes, forget the glamour and the glitz. It's about muscle. It's about athleticism. Yes, it is, in creating running lanes and protecting those valuable passers. So we've got Chad Neipling of V Sporto. We've also got Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama joining us, and of course Jamie Hancock of Preps Nation. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to lean on you guys to help me sort out the top five offensive linemen in the SEC. Hey, Chad, let's start with you.
Hey, Mark, how's it going? Nice to see you guys again. I appreciate you having me back on. Well, let's just get into this, man. This is one of the positions, and we can get into further debate after we list them and we get into this. But for me, this is a position that has a lot of quality depth coming back across the conference this season. So it's really kind of hard to just point out five guys, but I do have some mentionables that I can say after this, so I'll just run down. One, Cam Robinson out of Alabama. Freshman All-American last season, gave up 3 sacks out of 861 snaps. He's the first true freshman since 2006 is Andre Smith to start for Alabama. So for me, I went with Cam. I felt like in some of these preseason lists that have come out, he's kind of been overlooked. He was a big part of the 200-plus yard average that Alabama had on the ground, and he's going to be key going into 2015 to get that ground and pound started, especially with the lack of depth that they've had at running back with some key injuries. But according to my man Steven Scarborough, should be back in time to help him out later on this season. So next one at number 2 will be Tunsil at Ole Miss. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, this one really was hard for me to deal with because latest news coming out, and we can talk about that after we finish, but there's a possibility he may not be a key part of Ole Miss's offense, but he's going to have to be to help out with that run game that was lacking last season. At number 3, Vidal Alexander out of LSU. He is making the transition from left guard to right tackle, which is a position that he actually played as a freshman when there were some key injuries that went out. So this is a position that's going to demand him to be a lot more athletic, so we'll see, but he's trimmed down, 6'6", 320. So I want to see how he does with that. But, again, he's going to have to really show that athleticism coming into the 2015 season playing that position. At number 4, Denver Kirkland coming out of Arkansas, making the transition from being inside the telephone booth at the guard spot to going out to the left tackle. That was actually the position that he was recruited for coming into Arkansas, playing left tackle in high school. But due to the personnel and the depth that they had at Arkansas, Bielema had to go ahead and get him going on the line, so they put him inside that phone booth. But he should be a guy that could be pretty explosive and help Brandon Allen and Enos in that passing game as they go forward. And at number 5, I can't not do an O-line list without talking about Georgia and their dominant run that they've had the last couple seasons, and that's with John Theus at number 5. A guy I think is going to be an anchor to this team, helped with that 250-plus game average per yards on the ground. One Nick Chubb with almost 1,800 yards rushing, didn't do a thing in the first 4 games. I mean, he's a key part of, and he's going to be a leader on that O-line. So John Theus at my number 5 spot. Some mentions real quick. Ron Kelly at center, and I think Boehm at Missouri, and Fetty at A&M, Matthews at A&M. Then you turn around and look at Skipper and Tretola at Arkansas. I think those are some guys that deserve some mention as well.
All right, Chad's got Cam Robinson at 1, Laremy Tunsil at 2, Vidal Alexander out of LSU at 3, Denver Kirkland at 4, and at number 5, John Theus, the veteran out of Georgia. Good stuff there. All right, Stephen M., how does your 5 stack up against Chad's?
Well, number 1, like my man Chad, I do have Cam Robinson from Alabama. This is a guy, 3 sacks and 862 snaps given up, a young man that was huge as a freshman last season, the first true freshman to play at left tackle since, as Chad mentioned, Andre Smith, and a guy that takes over on that left side of that defense and is going to be very pivotal this season as he will play with either Rosh Pierschbacher or, either Rosh Pierschbacher or Alphonse Taylor on that left side. So Cam Robinson likewise at number 1. Number 2, I actually have Dan Skipper at Arkansas at my number 2 because of his toughness. This guy is a freak of nature. He has a mean streak. He loves his quick strike with his hands. He loves his footwork, and he loves to get after you and get to the second and third level of a defense. Sheer size does Dan Skipper have? Brett Bielema loves to beef up front, but he loves to beef that can move. He can't just be flat-footed. You got to move with Brett Bielema. So Dan Skipper, I have him at number 2. At number 3, I have Laremy Tunsil out of Ole Miss, and one of the reasons why, it's not just the run game, it's also the pass game, especially if everything personally with Tunsil clears up and there's no huge issue and he's able to play. You talk about Ole Miss is breaking in a new quarterback, no Bo Wallace. It's either going to be Chad Kelly or whomever else is on that roster. So Laremy Tunsil has got to be able to protect well up front and also open up the holes in the run game for Ole Miss, because Hugh Freeze loves a balanced offense, and that balance must start with that offensive line and Laremy Tunsil. So he's at 3. Number 4, I have Vidal Alexander out of LSU. The Tigers have a grown man at running back, and Leonard Fournette, let's be honest, he's a grown man. They're going to have to find the quarterback at that position to protect, whether it's Anthony Jennings, whether it's Brandon Harris, but having Vidal Alexander back in that offensive line to protect whoever the quarterback will be, and also to continue opening those run lanes for Leonard Fournette will be huge. At number 5, I actually have a tie here at first, but I'm going to give it to Georgia's John Theus. I had John Theus and Ryan Kelly in a bit of a tie there, but I'm giving it to John Theus because of his ability not just to block up front, but also to get to the next level. My issue with Ryan Kelly, he's got to continue being consistent and patrolling the traffic from that center position for Alabama. There were times last year where Kelly did a dynamic job, and then there were times where he kind of looked confused. He's coming into his 5th year, senior year at Alabama, has to continue improving on patrolling the traffic up front, calling out the blitzes, calling out who's trying to attack, get to the quarterback and the backfield where the running backs are concerned. So I have John Theus at 5 for Georgia. Ryan Kelly will be one of my honorable mentions.
All right, Stephen M., I'm glad you broke the tie there. There are no ties in college football, so we don't allow any ties. So you broke the tie in the moment. That was a good call for you. Good stuff right there. All right, top 5 with Dan Skipper being the one wild card coming on from Stephen M. Smith at the big 6'9", offensive lineman out of Arkansas. Jamie, you've heard a couple top 5 lists. You know the importance of offensive line play in this league in particular. Your thoughts?
When you talk about the offensive line in the SEC, Mark, you're talking about probably the most important position in the conference. We all know that quarterback is likely the most important position in the game of football, but in the SEC it's played just a little different. The defensive lines are so good, these offensive linemen had to be so versatile to make these lists. That's what makes this important. And you hear the guys' list, and I fully agree with them. Cameron Robinson is the best offensive lineman in the SEC. He is a future possible #1 overall pick there at the University of Alabama. He's extremely impressive, very athletic. He's everything that you would want in an offensive lineman. There's no doubt there. I love their list as they put them together. I think Tunsil is also a guy that you would see at the top of these lists. There's a little cloud going on there in several fronts around Tunsil at Ole Miss, but he's a very talented young man. I have John Theus a little bit more in a higher regard, I think, than the guys do. I think Theus is in that Stinchcomb mold of when they were at Georgia. He makes me think of those tall, long offensive linemen who are able to get the job done. Probably not as athletic as Tunsil and Cameron Robinson, but a very consistent offensive lineman in what will be a great rushing attack. I do like Denver Kirkland. I hold him in very high regard at the guard position. I think he's an absolute road grader, and he's a beast. Guards and centers get left out a little bit when you get in these conversations. Moving Kirkland out to left tackle for me is going to be a little bit of a wild card look, because now for the first time he's really going to have to defend the speed rush from his outside, and that's something that, yes, he is very athletic, but at 330 to 350 pounds, depending on which restaurant he visited this month, is going to be the fact that if they can get up, they can threaten him with the speed rush to the outside. Once he adjusts to that, now you've got the underneath move, and being that big, it's hard to really change your footwork and your standpoint when you're used to putting your hand on the ground and coming off the ball. And one guy that wasn't mentioned that I think is a very, very good offensive lineman, and he's somebody that was an unsung type player for Auburn the last 2 years, is Avery Young. He's a guy that started as a redshirt freshman at right tackle for Auburn, and they made the national championship game, and he did a very good job. He was never overwhelmed. He moved into guard part of the time this past season and was really good there, back out to right tackle when they had a few issues. He's a guy that'll go probably the first day of the draft when he decides to leave. He's very athletic, could play center guard or tackle, and he's big enough to do all those positions as well as get out and be an elite pulling offensive lineman. So he would actually be in my top 5 simply because of his versatility and his overall production while being at Auburn over the last couple of years.
So Chad and Stephen M., did you catch that? We almost made it through that conversation without going to Auburn, but we didn't quite make it out of the conversation. We had to get the Auburn Tigers in there. Good stuff with Avery Young. Jamie alluded to it. Are we giving a little bit more preference to the tackle position because of what it means on the outside to the quarterback position?
I think it's a position that you see that gets the tendency to get the love, especially when it comes to NFL draft time. You see that's a position that's highly touted in the first round. A lot of linemen that come in that first round, that the first 5 picks, they're tackles, and it's key on the next level. So I think, yeah, you're going to see that. I mean, someone's found a way to get guys to rotate into that position and they end up becoming top picks. Now you're seeing guys you're seeing a lot of movement. If you look at these lists, Alexander, Kirkland, Skipper, even, some of these guys, they're getting moved around quite a bit from their natural positions. So there's a reason for that, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that some of these coaches, they need to get a guy to the next level, especially like a Brett Bielema at Arkansas. He needs to get a guy like a Kirkland or a Skipper into the NFL for these picks and for everything that he's been doing to pay off. So I think that's key. I think that's another aspect of it. But, yeah, I think the tackle's going to constantly get the love because of how it's looked upon, especially come draft season.
Hey, Jamie, I'm going to hit you up with a similar question because of the tackle position gaining love in the traditional pocket-style offense. Is it less so, and are we going to see the effects of that with the read option coming into play where the left tackle isn't necessarily that stalwart position that's always protecting the blind side of a pocket-style quarterback?
I don't think so, because they're still very important in today's game where we spread the field, because typically that left tackle is an extraordinarily athletic guy in most standpoints, and they're able to seal the outside or get to the second level on the backside and allow for these cutback lanes that you're seeing that are so prevalent right now in today's game. Your running backs are becoming more of a downhill one-cut type runner, and you don't see as much of the east-west jitterbug type back as you did, and now these offensive linemen are extremely important in getting down the field as they have spread the field so much. They're using 53 yards east and west on these fields nowadays. I think they're even more important when you got guys like Cam Robinson that can get out on these screens, and I think it's going to be more important to be very athletic. And so that kind of leads to my importance role when you talk about Avery Young or Cameron Robinson or Tunsil. And it may be that Denver Kirkland, if he weren't in the Arkansas style of offense, I don't know that he would be a beautiful fit at left tackle, because he is athletic, but he is so big, would it cause him trouble in space if they weren't such a inside-the-box, downhill type team?
And this might be a conversation for another time because it encapsulates the entire team, but as soon as we talk about what Chad described in the Tunsil camp for Ole Miss, I look at a unproven quarterback. I look at a running game that was probably the worst in the division last year. I look at a defense that was amazing most of last year, but lost key pieces, especially in the secondary, and is really thin at linebacker. And now I hear about Tunsil possibly not coming back, being the same player, and it's like, wow, they're really strong at wide receiver on offense, but that's the place that it's not going to benefit you if you can't get those guys to football. And I think Ole Miss might be on a little bit of red alert. A really good team in another conference, but stacked up in that division, wow, this could be an issue for Ole Miss overall.
Yeah, here's the thing with that. I wanted to go back to what Jamie was saying with the line changes. You know, Skipper's moved to that right tackle spot. He's a nasty player. He's a guy that if you get it out and you bust him out to outside, he's a guy that's most left tackles you want to look at them. They have skinny ankles because they're really athletic. Your guards mostly have the thicker ankles because they're exploding off the line. Skipper's one of those guys. I've had an opportunity to be close to him. He is a true 6'10", fellas. I'm 6'3", 6'4", and I got to look up. So he has a tendency to be very nasty. The thing is can he control his penalties? Now, talking about what you're saying there with Tunsil, with what's come out lately about Tunsil, it's kind of scary, Mark. We see that his stepfather has met with the NCAA. They're investigating it now. His stepfather has basically given him up, so to speak. If you want to call him a rat, he's a rat. But he went and he's told him there's recruiting violations that are possibly out there. He didn't go into detail with the interviews that he's done with the media, but he's also talked about meeting with agents and several other violations that could keep Tunsil out of the camp this season.
All right, before we move on and shut this thing down, Stephen M., anything along these lines, anything we brought up in the last few minutes?
I mean, I agree with the tackle position there, but when I look at the guard position in college football, to me it's just as important because at that guard position, whether it's right guard or left guard, it's your job to pull around and throw blocks to the outside to set up the run lane. I go back to a former Alabama offensive guard and Chance Warmack. I remember at one point in time during that tenure, Barrett Jones got all the attention because he was the decorated offensive lineman. Barrett Jones, who played center, tackle, and guard during his tenure at Alabama, got a lot of appreciation. But during that championship season Alabama had in 2012, when it faced Notre Dame, a lot of that offense, a lot of those rushing yards were geared through Chance Warmack because it was him that was pulling around and basically putting Barrett Jones on his butt, so to speak, and carrying him down the field in those blocks for Eddie Lacy, T.J. Yeldon, and the host of backs that Alabama had in 2012. So at that guard position, when you're able to get out of your phone booth, come around, throw a kick-out block, get downfield, providing you're 330 pounds plus, and you're still able to move like that, offensive guard is very pivotal.
All right, that's one of the reasons I come to you guys. You guys make offensive line play even interesting. So we got Stephen M. Smith, the one and only from Touchdown Alabama, Jamie Hancock of Preps Nation, and Chad Neipling of B Sporto. Gentlemen, appreciate the time. Thanks for the rundown.